Hi everyone, thanks for pressing play. I'm Pixel Paul and welcome to another episode of 10 Games for a Tenner, this time looking at the Xbox. So, the Xbox released in 2001 in North America and 2002 everywhere else. This was Microsoft's first entry into the console market during the 6th generation. It saw it going up against the Nintendo GameCube and PlayStation 2. There was around 1,000 physical Xbox games released, which is quite small in comparison to the 4,500 games released for PlayStation 2, but it was released 18 months later. You can certainly see the difference when you go into any CEX store with the amount of stock or shelf space that the Xbox gets in comparison to the PlayStation 2. So, 10 for a tenner. So if you've not seen any other episodes that I've done in this series, essentially what I do is find 10 games that you can buy for a console for just £10. Basically using sort of CEX valuations at the moment. So I'm very much using, like I say, the sort of CEX current price, which would be April 2024. These prices can go up, they can go down. And as I'm sort of finding at the moment with Xbox games, they are on the rise. I think across the board, most of these sort of retro games are now starting to increase in price. But it was very sort of common that you would find multi-format games for the Xbox at a cheaper price than sort of like the PS2 or certainly the GameCube sort of counterpart of it. So the Xbox games are on the rise, but I have managed to find 10 games for just £10, and I'm going to take you through those now. So you've just got an Xbox, you're going to start an Xbox collection. I think these 10 are a pretty good starting point. So these prices range from between 50p, and I think the price of the most expensive one was £2. So between there, and you do tend to find that a lot of the sort of Xbox games, and there's a lot of decent Xbox games, do sort of fall under that £2 bracket. So it is a really good console to collect for. It doesn't have the biggest back catalogue of games, which I mentioned before, but there are some really decent games in there. And I think I've managed to find 10 decent ones here. So we'll start off with the cheaper ones. These are all 50p games. And we're going to start off with a game that I think has one of the ugliest box arts ever, which is a shame because actually underneath it, if you can look past that, it's a really decent game, and it is Brute Force. So like I said, this is 50p. I think this was one of the first games, if not the first game, that was announced or released by Microsoft Studios after the Xbox had been released, and yeah, I think it's not a bad game at all, considering it's only 50p, and it does have that really ugly box art. It was billed as a bit of a squad-based third-person shooter. It's more of a run and gun game than that. There's not a huge amount of tactics to it. You can flick between different characters. They all have those sort of standard different kind of abilities like snipers and explosives and that sort of thing. But yeah, at 50p, it's dumb but fun, and yeah, well worth picking up. So that's your first game. Next up, I think this one's really underrated. I think it came out on PS2 and the GameCube, and there is an Xbox 360 version. The 360 version is probably the best version you can buy of it. But I think it's a decent game, quite overlooked because it's a movie license, and it's Peter Jackson's King Kong. So after the 360 version, this is probably the second best version of it, just about, probably between this and the GameCube. But yeah, I think it's a really decent game, very sort of common, very easy to find, only 50p at the moment. I think the PlayStation 2 version is also 50p, but the Xbox 360 version has dramatically increased in price recently, possibly because Godzilla vs Kong or Godzilla Cross Kong has just come out. So yeah, it's a decent pickup at 50p on the Xbox. Yeah, it's based on the film. They do take some liberties with it, which is amazing considering it's a 3-hour film that they had to include some extra stuff into the game. But you play most of the game as the character Jack from the film. I'd say about 75% of the game you play as him in a first-person view. And then 25% of the game you play as Kong, and it sort of becomes a bit more of a third-person brawler, as you probably would expect. But yeah, graphically it's really decent, amazing score to it, and yeah, it's a decent game. It is a little bit short. I think, if I remember right, it's roughly about sort of 6 to 7 hours possibly. But even at that sort of length of time for a game, at 50p, you can't go wrong. So that's the second game. And then the next 50p game, there was a couple I could have chose, but I thought, for just to keep a little bit of variety going with the 10, I've gone for Mission Impossible Operation Surma. So yeah, again, 50p. Mission Impossible games are a bit hit and miss. Obviously, they're usually sort of quite stealthy, and this one's good. It's not great, but it's not bad. And again, for 50p, you can't go wrong, really. It's probably a little bit more easier to get into than, say, a Splinter Cell game or a Metal Gear Solid game. It's a little bit more kind of, you're led through it a little bit more, but the gadgets that are in the game, as you would expect from a Mission Impossible game, the gadgets make it probably that little bit more fun. Relatively common to pick up, so yeah, another decent addition to the 50p pile. So moving on to the £1 games, and when I was doing this, looking to do this video, and we sort of researching all the prices on CEX, there was loads of games in the for £1 and some really decent games. I've picked out, I think, about 5 at £1. I could have picked out a few more. Splinter Cell was one of them. Medal of Honor Rising Sun was another £1 game. There was X-Men Legends, that's £1 as well. So I could have picked quite a few £1 games, but I've gone for this 5 again, just to keep a little bit of variety, and also because some of them I really like as well. So the first one is Project Gotham Racing 2. Really easy to find this one at the moment. It's a bit of a charity shop favourite as well in the UK, so you can usually find it in charity shops too. But yeah, for £1 you can buy Project Gotham Racing 1, the original game. That's £1 as well, but I've gone for 2 just because it's that little bit newer. But yeah, it's a forgotten series because it's, there aren't any more of these games being made, which is a bit of a shame, because at the time this was a really decent arcade racer. Probably a little bit more of a serious arcade racer in a way, but it's one of those games that sort of really brought some new ideas to the racing game genre as well. So yeah, it's a really decent game. £1. Next up, we have, so I'm not a huge fan of stealth games particularly, but I have played the first 2 games in this series. And I thought I'll go and drop this one in as well. It's Hitman 2, Silent Assassin. I have played this one, but it was a very long time ago. And like I say, I'm not a massive stealth game fan. So the Hitman games are not games I naturally sort of go to play. But I have played this one, like I say, a long time ago, and do remember it being pretty good. I think most people sort of recognise Hitman 3 as probably being the best Hitman game. People may correct me on that one, but I do remember certain levels. I think it was in like Mumbai or somewhere like that, or Miami. Mumbai and Miami sort of springs into my mind as being really decent sort of levels in it. So yeah, Hitman 2, Silent Assassin, £1. Next up, now yeah, this one is an absolute classic. I personally prefer the first game in this reboot series. But I think for the sort of complete, full game of, I just think this was probably the best of that series, even though I personally preferred the first one. And it is Prince of Persia: Warrior Within. So yeah, I preferred Sands of Time personally, but most, if not, the vast majority of people do tend to go with Warrior Within as being their sort of favourite. I think everything about this one was probably just, as good as Sands of Time, and then just ramped up a little bit more. The combat's a lot more sort of fluid, the graphics are better, the score was really good, the story was good as well, the sort of parkour was improved, and yeah, it's a really decent game, Prince of Persia: Warrior Within. If you haven't got it in your collection, I'd say that's one you definitely need to have and definitely need to play, because it probably is considered to be a classic. So Prince of Persia: Warrior Within. And then next up we've got True Crime, Streets of LA. So this is, I don't want to say GTA clone, but it's very sort of similar to GTA, quite sort of open world, possibly a little bit more linear than GTA games, a bit more story driven perhaps. But yeah, it's not a bad game, this one. Very sort of easy to find, quite common. I think this was the first one, and there was a sequel in New York. I think that is a little bit more expensive than this one. So this is £1. But yeah, it's well worth a pick up, well worth a playthrough. I played it again, going back quite a few years, so I can't remember too much about it, but remember sort of quite enjoying it. So £1, True Crime, Streets of LA. And then the last £1 game is Deus Ex Invisible War. So this was the second Deus Ex game. It was an exclusive for the Xbox. And yeah, again, sort of very overlooked in a way, which is kind of sad really, but it had some really amazing ideas in it. Very sort of mix of stealth and action, just like all of the Deus Ex games are. And you can definitely sort of see the influence this had over the later Deus Ex games as well. So yeah, a really decent game. For £1, it's an absolute steal really. And I think it still holds up today. So yeah, that's a really decent game. Deus Ex Invisible War. So moving on to the final two games, and these are the slightly more expensive games. Now you might think you thought you were going for variety when these two games are kind of similar in a way, in that they're both sort of sci-fi shooters, first-person shooters. But I wanted to include this one just because no one seems to talk about it. It was really overlooked, bit of a hidden gem. Xbox exclusive, I think again. I think it was an Xbox exclusive. It certainly wasn't on PlayStation anyway. It may have been on PC. But yeah, not many people talk about this game, and it is a really decent game. So this one is £1.50, and it is Pariah. So yeah, I think this is a really underrated game. I think it's I'd argue it's one of the best games on the Xbox, the original Xbox. Very sort of similar to other sort of sci-fi shooters in a way. It takes elements of other games, so there's a little bit of Red Faction in here as well. But yeah, sort of sci-fi based shooter, some really amazing weaponry in it. There's a couple of, I think, like on rails type sections as well. There's vehicle sections. And yeah, I mean, the visuals for it are really good too. It's fairly short, that's the only thing with it. It's not the longest game. I couldn't tell you how long, roughly, but I remember it being relatively short. It doesn't take too long to finish. But yeah, it is well worth a look. And again, at £1.50, it's worth a go. It's really worth a go at £1.50. So yeah, Pariah. And then the last game, this is a £2 game. You probably know which I'm going to choose here. You've got to have this, I think, in your Xbox collection. It's the obvious choice. It's Halo, which you can pick up for £2. So you can actually get Halo 1 or 2 for £2 at the moment. But either way, yeah, I mean, I went for Halo just because it's the original, it's the classic, and we all know what Halo's about. It still holds up today. It still has its quirks that I didn't get along with back then, and I still don't get along with now. But yeah, what more can you say about Halo? It's a masterpiece, and a must-have game for the original Xbox. So at £2, that completes your 10 for a tenner on the Xbox. So those are the 10 games that you can get for £10 at CEX at the moment. So I'll list those games in the description with the prices. Like I say though, they can change, and Xbox games are currently on the rise. So, if you are thinking of picking up an Xbox or picking up original Xbox games, now is probably the time to do it, because I can see them, just increasing over the next few months. Like PS2 games have, like GameCube games certainly have. There's just a big sort of rise or increase in the value of these games at the moment. So yeah, if you're looking to start an Xbox collection, I would get on it pretty soon. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. Did you like that 10? Do you think there were other games that I could have included in there? If there were, check the CEX app, have a go yourself, see if you can find a better 10. I think that's a pretty decent stack, personally. Would be a decent start to any collection. But yeah, if you've not watched any of the other videos in this series and you want to see me covering the PlayStation 2, Xbox 360, Nintendo Wii, and I think I did do something else, I will put the link to that playlist, which is on my channel, at the end of the video. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, if you can hit that subscription button, that would be very much appreciated. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.